Right. Thank you and everyone for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 145. Sorry for the feedback. But thank you for everyone who joins and listens today. Of course, this information that's shared in here through the diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives and individuals that come in here every day to speak. I truly appreciate you guys, and I hope everyone finds this information as valuable as I know I do every single day. And not only today, but hopefully even centuries, not thousands of years in the future, these audio files get to be listened back to as some sort of historical context. But welcome everyone to the space. Shellfish and 2222 and Luffy, Fridge. Feel free, guys, to hit the request to come up if you'd like to speak on any of the topics that I posted above. I'm gonna go grab an article and some other news information in I shouldn't say news, but technical information in regard to the hashtags above, and yeah, we'll get the discussion started. Oh, welcome up, Luffy.
Yo, Death Ranger, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? How you been?
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, I took a little bit of a break from Twitter the last couple of months. So yeah, try to get familiar with what's going on and what's happening in the crypto space and how are you all doing? And yeah, so looking forward to a great conversation today.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. And today probably won't really be too much DLT related topics. I'm going to talk more about the metaphysical layer, the beneath the surface of the what we think to be the atomical layer of our reality. So the quantum fields, as we have it mathematically described, and take into account the thoughts of realism and locality. And this what I think to be an outstanding possibility, that the retro causality, meaning the future in which the past we are existing in temporarily, is in itself a mathematically determined pathway, which goes into a whole bunch of different pathways that we can speak about context wise. But yeah, so feel free, anyone, like I said, to hit the request to come up and speak if you guys want to on topics. I posted some two articles above so far. One from Quantum magazine speaking about the Bell's theorem, which is really in part what leads to the mathematical probabilistic nature when speaking about localism and reality and the physical facts of the way that physics works for us in this temporal space as we perceive it to be. Yet the question notion of is that a localized effect comparably to is the rest of the universe exactly what we think we are perceiving to view, and those physical laws make up the laws of structure and governance throughout the entire universe. Yeah, so it's really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Luffy.
I think that's a fascinating a fascinating topic. I mean, Um, I've spent a lot of time actually thinking about these things and also doing research on these topics, and I think there's a lot that is currently happening in science and in general where I think you already know that through the double slit experiment, the quantum physics and basically the subatomic particles are not really behaving as we are really familiar in classical physics. Um, and these things actually are, I would say there are a lot of people who are actually saying that there are certain failures that science has done over the past couple of years, and that actually science is now really going back to the very fundamentals of how it actually is, and on how the universe actually operates, right? So, for example, the experiment they did with those twin particles, where they were sending those out, right, where they seem to have found something faster than light. This also speaks to the nature of time, right? So we think in about time in a very linear nature, actually, right? So past, present, and future. But the fact really is that you cannot really pin it down exactly, right? As soon as you say now, it's basically past, right? But you don't really have any access to the past or to the future. So it's yeah, it's fascinating also because Einstein sometimes said, or earlier said, that maybe time really is an illusion, right? So maybe there is something where we have a singular or singularity point, like an infinitesimal presence that we simply cannot grasp because it's infinitesimal. um, but this actually then would allow for such theories like non localization, for example, faster than light travel, for example, scalar forces, where basically if there is no time, then there is really not such thing as space, right? So basically everything is in a unity where everything is connected with each other. And I think Nikola Tesla actually has put a lot of thought into this, into the scalar nature of the universe. So I think it's a fascinating topic. But yeah, maybe just some introductory thoughts from my side there.
Well, that was all very, very great information and very informed as well, Luffy. I couldn't agree more, though, with when you look at physics and the physics community today. Many from the outside don't realize that the inside is actually a huge dilemma at this point. It's actually one of the it's good. A lot of physicists are terming it the you know the the crisis in physics, because there is a fundamental crisis with the fact that we only, for the last few decades, have only applied mathematical axiom probabilities in these equations without taking into effect or thought the metaphysical interactions that actually are the occur or what leads to the occurrence of the physical mathematical properties of axioms that we're trying to measure. And so the entire basis of math, science, physics is based off of assumptions. And these assumptions be just assumptions. And so when you base your entire physical structure of belief on assumptions, well, all you need is one proof of it being inaccurate for that assumption to be considered wrong. And I think this is what we've achieved in the 21st century. Is, of course, like back in when you had Albert Einstein, it was very hard to disprove some of the things that he was speaking about, and prominent physicists were speaking about at that point in time, because the technology didn't exist for us to create these high energy zones, these fields in which we try to take measurements and understand that we really can't actually get the mathematical axiom interaction on an exact scale. We have to use probabilistic scales, and so uh, it's very in tune with the thought of emergence, or how evolution evolves. And we term it emergence because it's just this fundamental awareness that we're not able to comprehend at this moment. And so, yeah, I think that going forward, we're starting to see a lot of physicists. I think prominent physicists kind of take this route where we're trying to learn the metaphysical layer, and that lead to the physical layer. This measurable layer in which the macro perspective of reality is occurring. That we can use things like um, Albert Einstein's general relativity to be able to account for these types of interactions, but understand why these types of interactions are the interactions that they are, and exactly. how that occurred, why that occurred, and then further propagate information into these possible future interactions based off of all of the not only quantum layer of interactions that we can try to measure occurring around us being very highly probabilistic in nature, but also being able to say, well, we know it leads to this exact probability or this exact equation and solution.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's I think those were some great points that you mentioned there, right? And I think maybe to go through that a little bit, right? So in terms of the fundamental crisis um, that science is in, right? So I think it's a very materialistic, um, some sort of very rational endeavor currently, right? Where there's no sense about things like spirituality, for example, or various laws of the universe and things that are, yeah, that are basically maybe higher, right? Higher laws that are not really, that might never be known to humans, right? So I think, and this is also where a lot of mathematicians actually come in and say, well, we are finding laws and we're finding patterns in nature, so we're finding our mathematical models, and currently I think it's a little, I don't know what to call it. It's a little bit of an arrogance, or maybe I would say, but it's a very yeah, rationalistic or materialistic thing that science currently says. One example would be, for example, if you think, well, if the human body, or what some wise guys in the past have said, right? So the whole the sum is more like, what is it called? The whole is more than the sum of its parts. Right? So if you think about that for the human body, for example, if you only think that you're flesh and bones with like chemical processes going on in your body, and then you cannot account for various things like intuition, for example, right? And then you cannot account for various things such as creativity, for example, or um, how the human mind actually works, right? So we have a lot of trouble actually figuring out why the human mind does what it does, right? And I think this is I think a little bit of a return of spirituality and spiritual laws to science, to the scientific method, um, and also back to an understanding that there is a universe based on order, right? And a universe based on extremely precise functions. And I'm quite. I mean, maybe I'm going out of my way here. I don't know, right? But I don't really think that there is anything that exists as probability, right? Because there is. If you have probability, then you have a certain force that basically acts out of order and out of law and out of natural law and out of yeah, natural principle in general, right? So you have a random force that is simply out of, which is out of measurement in any way in the universe, right? And this is why I would believe then the whole universe would just drive down into chaos, right? Because, for example, if you throw a dice, there's exactly or a lot of forces that if you go through all of these events, then you could actually say, well, even the throw of dice is subject to law, right? Because, for example, how that dice is made, with what material, what density that has, the amount of muscular force that one takes when he throws the dice, right? The temperature in the room. So all of these things that we really cannot account for. I think it's too complex, right? There's simply too many things to put into a model, right? But I would say even that is not out of it's I don't think that there is such thing as probability. I think that's not really random. But yeah, I mean, this is like a very interesting discussion, I would say. So I always try to stop here to let other people talk as well, because I don't want to overtake the conversation. But
No,
that is just my take on it.
no, and I couldn't agree more. When I use the word probability or probabilistic, it's in reference to the inability for us to be able to measure it. And because you're so
Yes,
right,
I
I believe
understand.
that
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. Mhm.
exactly. Because everything that happens, I think, happens for a reason, and everything that exists is existing for a reason. And whether that be reason be no reason, that still is reason enough. I also really liked, you brought up like the measurement issue, right? And so yeah, measurement in itself is based off of assumptions, right? We have timed a spectacle of us viewing what would be light, photons moving, and tried to create a measurement based off of that. Still assumptions, because we have taken an assumption of what we perceive to be occurring and then built foundation off of that. And so, yeah, like science in itself is just built off of complete assumptions at this moment. Yeah. So, Shellfish, please go ahead.
Sorry about that. So I was watching a video and it was talking about how we are more of an open system, more wired like a Wi-Fi network as far as our brain is concerned, which is absolutely fascinating because of Luffy, you were saying like the intuition and just interconnectedness in general. If that is the case, and all these metaphysical um, meditations and just being one with the universe is being proven right now, that is just like mind blowing. So when you have like that intuition or deja vu or um, just interconnectedness, like it's pretty awesome. So you're just your little antennas, your feelers or whatever. You're just navigating around through the world, and there is a part of you that is actually sending out vibrations, and it's kind of responding back, kind of like ripples in the water would be, but energetically, right? Feeling out there and sending um, just signals. Like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like what you said there. It's nice to talk with you again, Shell. I haven't heard from you in a very very long time. So yeah, I mean, I, I think it gets very. I think it gets very difficult for the postmodern ego to understand things like non-locality, for example, or non-dualism, because we're actually used to thinking in black and white, right? Cold and warm, right? And all of these dualistic systems, right? Because we only see the extremes and then the effects of a certain thing. But if you really think about it, it's actually the same thing, right? Because cold and warm is actually sliding on the same scale depending on the vibration of the atoms, right? So it's a degree of vibration, right? We call it cold and we call it warm, but that is just because we have found words for various extremes of that same thing, right? Same with light and dark, right? um, there is a certain element to it, the principle of polarity, for example, where there's always in everything there are certain poles, but there's always a middle as well, right? So what happens in that middle? And I think this is where also what Death Ranger said, right? The non-locality comes in, right? Because for the postmodern ego, people are used to thinking, right? And having a lot of thoughts in their heads and basically jumping from one conclusion to the other. But if you can really silence the mind through meditation, for example, and achieve a state where you're not thinking, then basically your vibration gets raised, and then basically you're getting attuned to certain things, to certain knowledge, to other things in the universe, right? And I think this is where exactly what you're saying, right? You can then plug into the ether, basically, right? Like the substance that underpins actually all of our phenomena or phenomena in the world that we see. So I think this is also where yeah the principle of the creator comes in, but I'm not gonna go into that. So Shall, please go ahead.
Um, I know we've talked in these spaces before about the frequency healing and all the different hertz that you can kind of meditate to. But I do tend to vibe a lot through music with people, and I definitely get brought back to the moment, like of different concerts, like or different experiences I was going through the first time I heard the songs. But imagine the vibrations that have, uh, passed through time of, like, Bach and different, beautiful masterpieces, like, that are still able to go through, 100, 200, 300 years. Different hymnals, the monks, vibrating, like, all these different things that are being put out into the universe, and being able to connect that far back in time, if you wanna look at retro causality, like, connecting with those vibrations that are put out there, and, not sure if that's actually what you were talking about, Death Ranger, but, the idea of, chanting the same chants that, ancestors did kinda connects you, I think, on some level.
It's an interesting. And I'm gonna just bridge between what you and Luffy had said, and we'll go to 888, which welcome up 888. But a bridge between you two. It was interesting because one of the things that were mentioned were meditation helping silence the mind and thought, and actually, it's almost the opposite for me. And the way I'll describe it is actually for the meditative state in which the connectedness or this calmness of how you put it, shellfish, this understanding of vibration, awareness of vibration. I think it to me as the most thought possible occurring state. The thing is that the thought doesn't occur in the mind. The thought occurs all around. And so, we think, right, that thoughts are in the brain or the mind. We see electrical signals go off when we say we have thought occurrences. But I think there's something very interesting to think about. The fact that everything you are perceiving is in this connected web of interactions of energy. And, going back to what you had mentioned before, Luffy, right? This web that connects all but is one. um, the things that you see being perceived notions of the vibration. If you think about a spider web, the interaction of the vibrational sum of the vibration in which you perceive to realize. I think it's a really interesting thought when thinking about when we learn to understand this metaphysical layer more deeply, from a operational sense, the possible things of thoughts or these types of things like interactions, retro understanding the retro causality, possibly, if you will. The I think you also mentioned some different things, shellfish, right? Like when some individuals see the future, or talk to somebody who may have passed away. I think it's very relative, all in these types of different operations that are occurring. Just the realization of them is different. One realizes the occurrence of the vibration, where another some doesn't. So I think that's interesting. Well, uh, though 888 or Luffy, you unmuted if you want to jump in, and then 888.
No, that was fantastic. I think that was a perfect summary, actually. So please, 888, let's go.
Hey, thanks for having me up, Death Ranger. This is my jam, as Shellfish knows. So, yeah, great conversation. So, just to touch on a few points, Shellfish brought up monks, and I am, believe it or not, some would question my whatever, but it's all good. Balance, right? I am a practicing Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist. I'm very fortunate that we have a temple here in Ohio, um, that I actually get to go to and participate in empowerments and such. So there's nothing more important than meditation, and stopping thought, because, as the Buddhists say, it's a monkey mind, right? And we must remember that we're all from the same particle. We just have, we're all just floating around out here, right? So, um, the vibrations that these mantras and the practices that are to be done daily have been around since the beginning of time, even before Christ. And man, let me tell you, a lot of those practices are so simplistic, um, but yet they're so powerful and beautiful that it genuinely moves me. Now I truly believe that Buddhism finds you. I believe it's the highest teachings on the planet, um, on how to just be human and how to just be, and how to let go and to not have thought, and to only practice the vibration of the Dharma, and um, live through loving kindness and compassion. And that goes from the ant on the ground that I choose to pick up and um, be a facilitator in its path, to put it back, where it belongs, because it doesn't belong here. And I'm in my studio right now, but in my studio, so I'll put it back outside. No different than if I'm lost and somebody else, intervenes in my life, because at the heart and the whole of it all, we are, again, all from the same particle. So um, I think the essence of being human is humanity itself, and through loving kindness and compassion, and really mastering um, the laws of Earth and our particular universe to the most of our ability, and that is gravity. That is the law of attraction, um, heart-centered love, loving kindness, compassion, all of those things in their simplicity. I think as humans, we complicate things too much, and if we just slow down and smile at a stranger, how, no pun intended, how that ripples through that person, through another day, through, the next person, that kindness just kind of transcends, um, and affects life every day. But we are both, and light and dark, again, because we are from the same particle that makes up the universe. So the true balance, in my opinion, in life is the balance between light and dark, and um, and just in finding our way and finding our own personal truth as to who we really are and why we're really here, and what is your gift to humanity that's going to make our journey here um, more pleasant. You know what I mean? So.
So I'm gonna throw it for a loop a little bit. So Luffy had mentioned something earlier, and I'm gonna go off of it. This thought that time in itself is an illusion, and is so. If time is an illusion, then the past that we perceive to occur had to be what we thought it to be for the future, to be the determined future that it will be. And so I think there's something really interesting, because we've mentioned the past definitely a lot in the space so far, and these past occurrences and vibrations and interactions, and all of the complexity that goes into that emergence of evolution, which leads us to the moment that we are in at this perceived moment. And going back to this spider web of this of interactions, this singular existence in which, dependent on the interaction that occurs, creates a vibrational frequency, which would spiral out, right, and interact with a different part of what we would think to be the spider web. You can think of the spider web as the universe, maybe, the matrix that we exist in. And I think it's really, really an interesting measurement issue that we have, because we can only assume, based off of the assumptions we have for the measurements that we have, the tools that we use to create what we think of as time, the past, relative to how we're perceiving it, and what we think to be the thoughts in our mind. I think it really raises some really large uh, implicational questions into what we are all perceiving to be the reality around us at this exact moment that we perceive to be a moment.
I would think that was great. It's I would frame it maybe a little bit different, but I think it goes to exactly what you're saying, and also what XRP 888 was saying, and also what Shellfish said, right? Because um, when you're doing that, if you're in a meditative state and you really try and accomplish the complete silencing of the mind, that no thought is ever arising, then you're basically out of time. It basically collapses that quantum wave function into a 0 point, an infinitesimal, non measurable awareness of presence, I would say. Right? And this is also where your vibrational frequency is being increased massively. And this is where, for example, a lot of internal healing can take place. For example, this is where a lot of downloads can take place from the Akashic records, or from Indra's net, as a lot of people call it, in the old and the wise ones. Um, this is, I think, the pathway to actually achieving that state of complete enjoyment, right? Basically, I think you cannot really measure it, but you can simply go ahead and enjoy it, right? So I think, yeah, what I, how I think that it is, although I don't really think about it, I just enjoy it, right? Because it really gives you a lot of relief when you're not thinking about something. If you're breathing in the right frequency and in the right rhythm, for example, which is also another universal law, or the principle of rhythm. um, if you're breathing in that right rhythm and basically completely silence the mind and collapse that wave function, you're basically not in the past, you're basically not in the future, but you're basically in eternal presence. And I think this is where the illusion of time comes in, what people mean when they say there's an illusion of time, because there's simply no time. If you're doing that, you're basically out of time. There is no, there is simply no reference point, right? Because who is it actually that is awareness of that aware, or who is aware of that awareness, right? So you can know that web because you are that web, because everyone is that web, right? Everyone is part of that total coherence, total awareness. Every ant, every plant, every animal, every person, right? But the ego structure, actually, this is where the monkey mind comes in, always try to make sense of things and always tries to go back to the past and to the future. And every time you're having a thought, basically it kills your vibrational frequency. This is where a lot of people get desperate, a lot of people fall into depression and these types of things. So, um, yeah, I think it's great, guys. I'm very thankful to have people in that room to talk about that stuff. So, yeah, maybe if you have certain things that you would like to go into a little bit more. I know it's a very big subject, so I try to keep myself very short and very precise so that it's understandable. But yeah, those are my take on it, let's say.
Go ahead, Shellfish, jump in.
So, with the double slit experiment, um, knowing that when we go into a meditative state or even a sleep state, we have our cranial sacral rhythm, which literally is a wave that moves back and forth from our sacrum to our cranium. And we close our eyes and go into a timeless moment, right? We become the wave. And the people that are still conscious are holding that place for us, um, through observing the universe. But like everybody goes into that state, right? Like that sleep state or meditative state. And if you don't, if you go for what is it, more than 4 or 5 days, isn't it? You could literally go insane or possibly die if you don't get sleep. It kind of rips apart reality for you, and breaks apart time itself. It's
Or
pretty
is
wild.
or is that the collective's way to show that you are not allowed to leave the illusion of the perceived notion of reality without consequences. And so every action has a reaction, and every probabilistic nature has some sort of occurrence somewhere. And so, yeah, I think there was a lot of things that were measured. I mentioned, sorry, and I lost my train of thought there. So, Bet, welcome up, man.
Hey, welcome. Welcome back. I say, did you try to sugarcoat being sleepy? Like it's
No, I think it's a delicate balance between the particle and the wave, to reside in this existence.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Bet. Thank you. Remember what I wanted to
yeah,
say now.
yeah, and welcome back, Luffy. Uh, cool to see you back.
Yeah, good to see you, man. How have you been? Everything good?
Yeah, cool to see that you joined back the cesspool we call Twitter.
It's
Cannot be without
X
you guys.
Bet. We left Twitter long behind. All right. So, but yeah, so to the double slit experiment, a wave and a particle. Another one of these moments, which makes us question what we believe to be occurring in the locality of what we think to be the realism of our reality. And so, the measurement of shooting a beam of light through a single split, which we think then the occurrence would be particle interaction with particle interaction with particle interaction. Of course, this is on what we would think of as like an attosecond scale, right, of atoms interacting with other atoms, that then hits the wall, and we have an atom that hits the wall, right? And so we can measure how fast that occurred in that atom, or the photon, the energy movement. But what occurs is the fact that we have magnetic waves that seem to hit all over. There seem to be particles hitting here and particles hitting here and particles hitting here. Well, how does that happen? Why does that happen? Well, the only, and this is the way that we kind of proceed to understand the notion of it, until the beam of light hits the wall, the energy hits its source of interaction, as we perceive it to be occurring. Of course, as it's moving through the air, it is having a whole bunch of interactions occur as well, but from a magnetic scale. And so there is a field that exists not only inside of the beam, but around the beam. And so this makes us question the notion of everything that we know, because then if we're viewing something right now, if you're viewing the chair in your room, but the fact that that chair has all of these different types of magnetic interactions that are actually occurring, that makes it be the chair that we perceive it to be the chair of. There's just really large implications of are we perceiving a chair, or are we perceiving these wave functions that when I turn away from the chair is no longer a chair anymore. Until I'm looking at the chair, it is not a particle rich interaction environment. It's almost
Wait, hold on. Isn't that basically the definition of a
ah
simulation?
yeah,
Basically.
Yep.
you got to it before I was able to say it. But yeah, it's very in tune to, you're wearing a headset, right? You're the consciousness is everything, and you are perceiving to be the wearer of the head.
Oh, no, we
Yeah,
lost
did you
you.
lose
I
that
think
Pedro?
so.
Yeah, sorry, I got a phone call for a second. But yeah, you being the perceived viewership through that headset for that moment, and just you guys go ahead and talk for 1 sec. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I think this is exactly um, what is important, right? This is exactly why we need to think about those things in a non-dual way, right? So it's basically both and it's neither, right? As long as you don't observe that particle, it's a wave. But if you're observing that particle, then it becomes a particle. Or sorry, if you're observing that wave, then it becomes a particle, right? So it exists in a superposition, basically.
Oh,
Right?
Luffy. So if
There's
this is the case, then do civilizations that are outside of our viewing pleasure, do they cease to exist? And by us expanding the ability to see past what we can right now, does that mean that we are manifesting those other beings or civilizations into existence?
Well, I think the bigger question then comes down to it, Shellfish, is do we exist? You know, if we exist, then sure, we could probably say that there's probably other things that are out there that exist. But do we actually exist? Really, those are the implications of that question.
Well,
And
Well, if
I
you think
think
about
they're
it, if you think about existence as having a a body in a material world, then no, because you're basically awareness, right? You're basically incarnated into a body, but you are not the body, right? Because that thing that runs the body is something different than the body itself, right? Because it's a creative principle that basically exists in in a different, some sort of in a different dimension than that, right? So in that way, you can say, well, the world does not really exist. The world is a dream, right? The world is not a substance, right? It's not the underlying fundamental reality. A stone is not really the underlying fundamental substance. It is the power and the force that actually gives rise to something that we call a stone, right? I would say.
yeah,
And I think this is where a lot of people have trouble with that, right? Because I mean, can you tell people that, well, you don't really exist, right? You're not really the body. You're not really the body that you think you are. You're something different because you are not the body, right? And I think this is where a lot of spiritual leaders are coming out now and reminding us of that, that we have yeah, we've had many lives before that, right? So we've basically it's training, right? So basically,
Luffy,
there's a
you
lot.
are treading on such a path that is like so touchy with a lot of people, and the
well,
whole embodiment of AI. Like,
well, I
if we
think
are not the body, and yeah, that is another path I would love to explore.
well, one
Yeah, I
one
mean
one
that's
caveat.
a different route, right? That's something different, right? Because with AI, we're basically trying to recreate God, right? Because we are infinite intelligence and we are not the body, but this is what we actually want to um, basically recreate, right? In a synthetic fashion, and this is why we're going to fail, right? This is why you cannot get even close to the intelligence that we are, and that basically the underlying principle of creation is. It's so many magnitudes above that what we are trying to do now with AI. I would say this is like yeah, the trying of people to recreate that all encompassing intelligence that we call the all, or God, or whatever you want to call it, right? Not to personify that, but um it's a lot higher, and there are things that we simply don't know, right? Which we might never know, right? And I think that's a good thing, right? So
One caveat that should always be said with the thought of the simulation theory, or this thought of the illusion of existence, it does not and should not, for anybody who listens to this in the conversation, take away from any factor of action that you do in our environment and in relation to other interactions with other of individuals in our environment. So, right, everything we talked about is very metaphysical, some of it being speculative, and it should not change in the sense of the direction of you wanting to be loving and empathetic, and making choice in our environment. So I should say that always, because one thing, just like you mentioned, Shellfish, right, the simulation thing kind of sometimes makes people go on the, oh well, I just do, I'm gonna just do whatever then because it doesn't exist, which I think is just it takes out of account how special existence is being perceived to be, whether the notion of the existence being existence or not existence. It doesn't change the fact that we're all perceiving to have this conversation right now, whether you be me existing at a different moment in space and time as we perceive space and time to exist. It does change the factor of our interactions, and as a collective, those interactions being very meaningful on a macro scale. But Dazzling, you came up, man. You got your hand up. Please feel free to jump into the conversation.
So, yeah, I've always thought that everyone kind of looks at things or perceives things with just their eyes only. But they forget that we've got so many other senses that we can tap into to perceive the universe that is around us. it's kind of interesting because when you close your eyes, you can start to visualize certain things and you can create these constructs right within your own realm, outside of the reality that you see through the lenses that are your eyes. Um, I think it's pretty obvious that there is I guess, a physical reality that we interact with, and I feel like we're just using this as a vessel, right, to somewhere else that we are more so a part of that we can't see. It's like um, this is the vehicle that we use to interact with all these particles that we see in this realm through our eyes. And I just think that a lot of people forget that. They forget to, kind of close their eyes and look at things a little bit differently. So it's so fascinating. Love it.
Love it, man. Yeah, totally. I would totally agree with you.
If you were to take a big deep breath, when I say big deep breath, I mean fill the belly. Before every response you had, yes, the response would be different because it's a different moment of notion of your existence, and so the thoughts may have accumulated in some different fashion. But the responses will always be in a different direction than they would have been if you didn't take that breath. So yeah, it's very interesting. And anybody who wants to come up and join the conversation, anything we've spoken about, Shasha, you are always one of the individuals that come to my mind when I think about retrocausality. It being something that we spoke about already over a year ago, very close in time to the time frame we're speaking about it
Where
now.
where is I like this guy because he has good views. What is his name? Alien?
No, no,
Um
no, no.
Oh,
Please don't
oh,
say that.
it doesn't
wait,
even
wait,
come
let's
anymore.
see.
That's alienation to you.
Alien Light, if I wasn't it.
Oh, maybe it was light alien. Yeah, you're right. You may be right.
Wait, that's right. Do you sometimes remove him from the stage, or is he just like giving his take and then he drops?
I've removed him from the stage many times.
Can we
Okay.
get can we get like Alien, Mimi, and Jimmy Dioto like in a room one day? That'd be awesome.
Yes, bring the
Oh
otter.
boy.
Oh boy.
That's actually
And
someone.
throw Mimi into it for good measure.
Yeah.
Devano, man, welcome up. I see that you came up. You haven't gotten a chance to speak yet. Please feel free to jump in the conversation because we probably got another 10 or 15 minutes I'm going to keep this going for. So I'm going to close it up
Oh,
for you.
hey, how you doing today, Death Range, and everybody on the panel? You guys were talking. I came in at the very tail end of the conversation, and I heard you talking about simulation theory and the collective consciousness, which is all up my alley. But I was trying to catch up to where you guys are at. And right when I came in, you guys kind of slowed down, so I was trying to understand what the conversation was about.
Yeah, so it's all really been for me. I've tried to keep the conversation in tune with the thoughts of retrocausality, the future that we will perceive to have occur, be our past, and so somewhat on the determinism route, speaking about this quantum metaphysical layer that exists in the particular format of the way that these symmetries of space have manifested through what we call emergence. Um, Also, you guys, I like it. You guys mentioned it before, right? Chaos, order through chaos, which chaos is just another term for the inability to have measurement, right? The inability to be aware of what is actually occurring um, while it's occurring, and a lot of different probabilistic natures of reality, what it could be, what the implications could be if we learned how to interact with these measurements, and spoke a lot about the metaphysical layer in the sense of the web of interactions, which all of us are perceived to be part of as we perceive ourselves to be, and I probably use that word a little bit too much, the space, these singular notions of identity of space, yet we know that there is a manifestation layer of vibration that connects all of us and everything. And so you just on this, that relative pathway in tune with locality, realism, determinism, and the retrocausality of the possible future nature based off of the moment that we're living and occurring now had to occur the way it had to be for the future to exist exactly how it will exist. I tried to
Heavy,
sum up about 50 minutes in two there.
very
So,
heavy,
all right.
very heavy right there. So I would say to you, Death Ranger, when it comes to this, okay, because you and I have had conversations, and this is why I said I wanted to have that space that I was referring to you about. Do you perceive, based off the context of this conversation, time as linear? I'll start there.
It's funny you brought up time because it was brought up multiple times, but I didn't mention it in my little 2 minute segment there. I think
And
time is relative to an illusion. So no would probably be the best way to answer that.
so if time isn't linear,
For me, it's by the way also no, because you know the feeling, Devon, when some people say, "Damn, the time is so fast, like it's gone by so fast," and for other people, it's like, "Oh, so slow." Like just the feeling of it, even though the nominal value, I guess, or time is just the same, like 5 minutes past. But for some people, it's like
It's like somebody turned the
forever.
clock up on the headset. The realization of the awareness of the spectrum of things occurring around you all of a sudden have changed, or you feel like time has just flown.
But even aging, right? Sometimes you see people, maybe something happened to their life or whatever, like a lot of tragedy, and then after a year or 6 months, they age so much, right? And other people seem not to. Like I don't know. I mean, it's like some examples from life. That
Like
yeah,
Will
Well, that's an
Smith
interesting one.
doesn't change age.
like Will Smith or something.
Yeah,
Maybe motion or something has to do with it. Like the saying, to retire is to expire or something. So that's why you see a lot of people as soon as they retire, they age so much, and whatever happens to them. But if they keep just doing something, right, is stay young. Feels like
so
maybe motion is the key.
Or is the effect what we would call the Mandela effect? Because of the vibrational interactions on the quantum fluctuation scale that you and I maybe aren't privy to from an awareness identity perspective, the particular notion of the reality that you got perceived to be pushed into was different or changed in order to fit the future of that retrocausality. And so, I think it's an interesting way to kind of put it if it was to be what we would think of as a simulation theory. Why it would have to occur that way.
I tend to believe that we've played around or discovered technology that has ripped the basically space and the fabric of time, and we have overlapping realities that tends to kind of warp
Is
our.
that a bird or a squeaky wheel?
It's a bird. I'm outside.
It's a
Movies.
squeaky wheel bird, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really think that we've probably done something and that things are overlapping because the Mandela effect, you know, doesn't seem to have been there throughout history. So what did we do? What did we do in the world, and what did we discover? And what realities are overlapping that are warping our minds and our realities in front of us? It's crazy.
Yeah, I
Or
think
did
that's
his
that's a perfect segue actually, right? Because the relation between time and how fast it moves, right? So we know, for example, that at very, very high speeds, for example, time slows down, right? And I think this is where the vibration kicks in, right? The faster you vibrate, if you think about a wheel, for example, right? A wheel that vibrates at a certain speed, well, you know that wheel is vibrating, right? And you have a figuratively you have a sense of time, right? But the faster something vibrates, if it vibrates really, really high, then it basically is considered still, right? So there's I think that relation between time and vibration. That the faster you vibrate and the higher you vibrate, then basically the less sense of time you actually have, right? I think this is where that's at least how I see it.
Or has your history never occurred? But for you to perceive the notion of what is occurring at this moment in time, and for reality as the collective in itself to achieve the goal that it has, which is the end, do you have to be who you perceive you to be at this exact moment so that the future will be exactly how it has to be?
Well, that's an interesting question.
You know,
That's really an interesting question because when we say that, and I think this is where a lot of the people in the past have actually said that time is circular, right? Time moves in a circular motion. That's why we measure time basically through circular motion in planets and various other. That's why we have a clock, right? So we measure time in a circle. And then time is in itself circular, right? And if you're basically slowing down your mind and not think about anything else, then basically your vibration is going to increase so drastically that there simply is no past, present, or future. It exists simultaneously. And this is where retrocausality comes in, right? Because then the future basically affects the past and the past affects the future. And I think this is where a lot of people have trouble in that non-dual approach of time, right? So that there is, it's a little bit difficult to explain it because you cannot really, because our speech and our how we are describing things is actually a very very dualistic thing. And I think this is where, yeah, I think that that knowledge will then come when you're really silencing the mind, and then basically by that note, you're increasing your vibration, I would say.
exactly. The
For
do.
me,
Sorry, go
for
ahead.
me, time.
No, no, no. Go ahead, Devon. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I was just gonna say, for me, time is very nuanced, right? This is why I asked the original question: do you look at time as linear, right? Because if you're looking at it from a physical standpoint, then time is nothing but simply just a benchmark to say that this happened at this moment in time.
I think you nailed it on the head there, actually, Luffy, too. The duality, right? This in itself, this duality of thought, which we perceive to be, you mentioned it, right? A linear path, right? One directional path. Yet it doesn't take into account for that it's still just one path. And so whether it be the forward or the backwards, however we want to perceive it to be, where you're at that moment of measurement, it be one path of attachment, one existence. And so yeah, I think this, you know, there's an implication there. I think that's really interesting. Shellfish, go ahead.
Okay, I have a few points. I think we all have our own vibrational signature, just like the sun, the chair. Each of us, has our own tonal vibration. With that being said, when you're doing cranial sacral work, you actually try to induce a still point in that wave that fluctuates from the cranium to the sacrum. And the body, when you reach it, it actually the wave will I don't know, I believe it completely stops, and then the body shudders a little bit, and then the wave will reinstate, or you can nudge it and start the wave back up, which is actually quite cool. But if you are able to instill that point, reset the body, um, what happens when you start doing what this gentleman is doing with the stem cell injection from his son? Are you, in fact, stealing some of his timeline or if you take in other people's stem cells, are you jumping timelines because you're incorporating their vibration or their I don't know if
I
I'm
think I
describing this right or not. Like, are you
no,
are you going from a 0 point when you take somebody's stem cells and pulling
I
back
don't
to nothing?
I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the right way to look at something in a sense, because what you broke it down to was your external opinionated point of view of the semantic of what is occurring, not actually what's occurring, but the semantic of it. And so, I mean, I don't know. Oh, nobody could answer that but you, because that would really you really would be your opinion about the semantic of the relationship of the action.
So are you familiar with the gentleman that is, like, taking his son's blood and, utilizing it for his own youth? I can't remember his name, but it's quite like well documented now. He's doing a lot of pharmacology, blood transfusions, I believe it is, and he has allegedly slowed his aging process down. And I'm gonna keep a close eye on it because I'm curious to see because they are alluding to the fact that we will be able to, hopefully within our lifetime, slow down the aging process, if not reverse it. Um,
Well,
and it's
the drug will
right.
be out next year,
Will it really? That soon?
most likely. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I
you
would
know,
say it's an externalized aging reversal, right? The body is perfectly
yeah,
capable of doing that itself, right? Because
yeah, but there.
what you're doing is just injecting basically. So the first thing is that um, from my perspective, I think that's also relates to a little bit of fear from aging, right? And fear is a very, very low vibration, and you basically can do that, and it works to a certain extent where it's basically the electromagnetic field of that younger person, for example, and that blood, for example, that he injects in himself. Yes, he has a higher that has a higher vibration, right? But that always goes into equilibrium with the vibration that is inherent in the body as well, right? So he has basically externalized that process into the outside world and basically doing that from outside in instead of inward. So I think this is where it works to a certain extent, but not really for like 500 years or something like that. So you cannot do that indefinitely, I would say.
Yeah, long term, there's huge questions about the implications because even if you're able to reverse the cellular degradation of the information inside the cell, it doesn't account for the elongated time period where we don't understand the implications of the further development of those cells in that environment, right? Typically, you reproduce and you die. What happens in the environment when your cells are contained in your body, right? For such a elongated period of time. Yeah, the information, will they run out of space to store this information? Huge question right there by itself. Um, there was one other thing, though, that was brought up that I wanted to touch on.
Death Ranger, does that come into play with downloading consciousness into the cloud? Because that was like another
Well,
aspect that
that would be the opposite
Kurt's
direction. Opposite direction.
for the data.
Well, yeah, we're building silicon microchips that are able to contain that data and then try and um, create an actionable step of processes in which the reproduction is that in a asymmetrical format to the data that we are, our identities, right? But yeah,
Ooh,
but
well,
it
how
would
about
be
this
out.
full circle? Then, if we were able to prolong our life indefinitely, then wouldn't we want to be creators that collapse the experience or simulation around us to save on data consumption? So that chair that we weren't looking at anymore ceased to exist in our reality as a way to compress and preserve energy and data storage.
Oh, that's if we created a simulation, generated a simulation in which that you then perceive to exist in that simulation. But this is why also the simulation hypothesis kind of points to the fact that most likely the factor that we wouldn't be in the first simulation, you'd be in a multitude of simulations that created more generations of simulations and so on and so forth. So, but still, some of it was kind of semantics, like your kind of opinion on that kind of feeling of what it is. Still, um,
But you
Death
are me and
Ranger.
I am you and we are all together. So it's all of our opinion in one.
Death Ranger, do you believe that we are in a simulation?
I think it has the highest probabilistic nature of
Oh,
the metaphysical layer of occurrences. Yeah, of
I totally
why
agree.
it exists the way it exists.
What do you mean with that word?
Simulation.
Mm-hmm.
So a predetermined occurrence of interactions based off of a deposition of pre-occurrence of interactions, and so to set up a simulation, right? Very similar. would be like a play, right? A play based off of predetermined architecture of interactions that occurred. You then reformat it and have it occur in a different, in a different way. And so I think a simulation is very similar to that same kind of thought where, for us, right, if we created a simulation, it would be a virtual simulation. It doesn't mean that this isn't a virtual simulation as much as we might perceive it to be organic and real and minerals and everything, right? It still could easily, the information could be broken down into bits, which could then be processed into, as we've already seen it, virtual graphics on our computers and headsets.
Awesome.
But let me challenge that
Thanks.
for a
Thanks.
second, real quick, Steph Ranger. Just so, are you saying that the infrastructure is predetermined, but the individual choice is innately free?
Are you asking my opinion about it?
Yes. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah,
My
no,
first
I heard you. I heard you. And so I don't know if I would say the word free. Could we say that the predetermined mathematical axioms of symmetries, which created the reality and the possibilities of actions to occur, are predispositioned? I think yes. Does that include freedom in it? Yes and no. For the factor in that I the choice that you make, do I believe that you are free to make that choice? Well, I don't necessarily think about it as freedom. I think about it as you made that choice because the actionable steps of what occurred is you made that choice. Did you choose to make that choice? Well, you would always say yes because you made the choice. The factor then that we think about though is as if there was a mathematical probability in the factoring of the architecture which led you to make that choice. Was it your choice? This is where I go to say then that we have to look at what the architecture actually is. If the architecture is a metaphysical layer in which this platonic space, we could even call it a platonic space of minds, as Michael Levine likes to call it, these symmetries of intelligence that make up the fundamental factors in which bind our realities together to make matter, if they are us, if consciousness is all, then you've chosen to be in that position. You've chosen to have that occurrence, that action, whether it be the most horrific thought of action that could have ever occurred or the most blessed. You chose to be there for all of consciousness. Every experience is just as equal as every other experience. And so you might have a perceived opinion about that experience, but it doesn't change the fact that every one of these experiences had to occur for the future to be exactly what it had to be. And so, I think that was maybe a little bit more in depth of the kind of trying to
No,
answer.
no, no,
But
no, no. You beat me to it. I was really trying to see how far you would go with it, and man, you aligned so much with me on so many different things. Yeah, I agree.
I think Dasnan wanted to say something earlier. Dasnan, you had your hand up,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Please, Daz, go ahead, jump in,
Nice.
man, and then
Thanks.
we're gonna close up the space.
I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Oh, Shell jumped over me. So, yeah, I forgot. It's all good. Thanks, Shell.
Now,
Uh,
let me
honestly,
ask.
Dazzling, I don't see you or Devon's hands up, and I see Larry
Devon's listener.
as like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I don't, yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't
That's
mean
right,
to.
Larry. You came up, man. I'm gonna close up. But if you have any thoughts or any questions you'd like to jump in with, please feel free to.
I think if you're going to close up, you should ask the question, if time is an illusion, is it a necessary illusion?
Ah,
Just as your requirement to end the space.
it it is a requirement. Yes, it is one of the factors that is represented as a law for us to be the perceived identity that we are, existing in a linear fashion of path. If that answers that.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Larry.
I think that's a perfect way to land the plane.
Loved it, man.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for coming today. This has been a really great conversation, and it wouldn't have been if it wasn't for all the great minds that came up. So I appreciate you guys, and I love you guys all. I hope everyone has a great rest of the night. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here this Thursday, but I'll let everyone know prior Thursday morning before the afternoon. And yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of the night.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Have a
Have a
good
good
day.
one.
Have a good night.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Night.
guys. Thank you, everybody.